Welcome to the MotUS Edge, where we celebrate business, primarily youth sports facility management, leadership, and motivation. Co-hosted by Stacey Rowe, Cole Stott, Kevin Brubaker, and Casey Jones. We are here to fill your cup with knowledge, laughter, affirmations, and comfort knowing that you're not alone. You can and will succeed with the MotUS Edge.
Hello, and welcome to the MotUS Edge. It's another Casey and Stacey episode today, and we are here to talk to you guys about how, if you're not having parking lot issues, then your gym isn't growing.
Parking lot issues. Wow. I've heard that a lot.
Yeah. I don't think I have a gym without parking lot issues.
I've never really heard of a successful one without that, for sure. That has been something, literally, I've been in this business over 25 years now, and it has always been a problem, especially if you're in an area where real estate is at a premium. You can't afford enough parking. And even if you could afford enough parking, there's rarely, that's just not available.
Yeah. I mean, if you're building a new building today in 2025, code kind of dictates how many parking spaces that you have to have. But even the number of parking spaces that code requires is not enough.
Enough.
So I think that looking at your surrounding areas and spaces like overflow parking, like where is overflow parking going to go? Because it's not a question of if you're going to have overflow parking, it's when you have overflow parking.
Yeah.
And so that's something that I learned later on is, we have one facility that the only option for overflow parking is in a neighbor's lot, and they are not happy with us parking there, so they threaten to tow the cars constantly. But, my first building, believe it or not, Casey, of course, this was back in 2000, but my first building, I think we had a total of, 15 parking spaces. Can you believe that?
That's so common and people don't understand because the types of buildings that we have to go into, you're looking for a warehouse with free span. They're designed for big trucks to come up to, one or two of them, with a small office staff of 5, so that's the thing. We're always looking at real estate and different properties and different things like that. But that's the thing. You find a 20,000 square foot warehouse and it'll have 5 parking spaces.
Yeah. We used to make our staff park in the back, but luckily there was a through road kind of out in front of the building. And so parents could park along the road, and it really wasn't an issue because they were only going on that road to come into the business area. So there wasn't a whole lot of traffic like traveling on that road, except the traffic coming to the facilities that were there. And so that was, although we only had a handful of parking spaces, our overflow parking was great. And so it worked for the most part. But I feel like it's always been an issue. We've paid neighbors to rent their parking spaces. I mean, what have you, I know you guys have dealt with it. What creative ways have you guys tried to avoid, having those issues?
Well, I wouldn't say we've avoided it. That is a common quarterly theme. I do not go a quarter without getting an email or upset parent or somebody that's, complaining about the parking. And the reality is, we just don't have enough of it. Or if we do have enough of it, then it's still going to take, we are much like a school, it's going to take 30, sometimes 40 minutes to get out of the parking lot. So what we've done, and not me, other people are far better at it than I am, but we do parking diagrams. So we will literally show the flow of, hey, this is what you're supposed to do. And we try to send that out typically at least once a quarter. Because what happens to us is somebody comes up and they park right, not in a parking spot, but they just sit there in the driveway waiting on their kid to come out. And that one person can then block everything up. And then the next thing you know, you've got a giant line because one person's sitting there waiting on their kid to come out. So it is something that we deal with constantly. It is, in every location we've ever been in, we've always dealt with that. So.
Same. We have a location that has over 200 parking spaces, and it's still not enough. Like it's insane. They share those parking spaces with a couple other things, but it's still not, like, they still have moments, not every day, but they still have a lot of times where they don't have enough parking spaces. One of the things that I used to do in my facility in North Carolina, we had a 7,700 square foot facility. Our lobby area for parents to come in was pretty small, and they would come in and they would go right upstairs to like a viewing area. And we had a decent amount of parking, but it wasn't enough. And so we got really creative because we had a parking issue, but then the lobby would also there would be like shoulder to shoulder, like packed, trying to push your way out the door sometimes. And so we staggered the schedule, which at first was kind of cumbersome and annoying to the staff. And it takes a little bit of creativity to do, because you want to obviously have your staff, back to back. You don't want to have a bunch of, it's okay to give them a break, but you don't want to have a 15-minute break after every class and then you're paying them for that and they're not doing anything, So, it's a bit of a puzzle, and it took some time to get it all together, because you have to manage not just the whole schedule, but each individual employee and kind of what they're doing when. But we would stagger things a lot. So instead of everything starting at the top of the hour, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, we would do, some things would start, at 4, some things would start at 4:10, some things would start at 4:30, and then 4:45, and then we would, 5 o'clock, and then 5:10, 5:25. We would do random times to give, I would count, like, okay, this is approximately this many bodies dropping off and coming through the front door,
We do that same thing. And then there are a couple weeks of the year where we know that it's going to be a major issue. And during those weeks, we actually hire in off-duty police officers to come and help with our parking lot. NCA week is one of those weeks for us, because we use Thursday as a travel day. So literally all of our teams aren't we lose a practice day. So everybody wants to get in extra. And that's when things really go nuts, is when we start sharing floors.
Yeah.
And, we try not to double the load in the gym, but oftentimes it gets close to that. So those weeks can be crazy.
So I've never personally actually done that, but that was going to be my next thing. Like, I think that some days and at some times it warrants, whether it's a security guard, police officer, or a parking person, like, that is another employee that you hire and train, and this is their job, and they it's because the reality is, I don't know, you may be different for you guys, but like, if the gym is open from 3 to 9 in the evening, you're not having this issue every minute from 3 to 9. It's high volume time,
Right.
Probably 4:30 to 8, maybe, or 4:30 to 7:30. So for that 3 hours, is it worth, I don't know, having somebody direct traffic? Does that make things go more smoothly?
You can get, at one time, I don't think we're currently using them, but at one time we had a group of parent volunteers, and we bought them all some bright colored vests and put some Stingray logos on them and gave them a flashlight, and they would go out to help and keep things moving. We have certainly put employees out there before. That didn't always go well, because sometimes people don't know these employees. We literally had a person that told one of our folks that they were going to run over them,
Wow.
and then it turns into a parking lot altercation, which is not good. So I think the thing is just owning the fact, a lot of it is putting it out there. Listen, we don't have adequate parking, or if we do, it's going to be slow. Because I don't know if you hear the same thing at the elementary school, but if I go pick up my kid from school, I got to wait in line, and then I got to wait in line to get out of school. And it just seems to be expected that that's going to happen, because, hey, there are 1,200 students at this elementary school, so it's going to take a long time. I don't know that expectation is always the same at the cheerleading gym. However, that's exactly what happens at the cheerleading gym. That exact same thing's going on. So.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I think that if you're listening and you have a parking lot problem, know that you are not alone. And I think that many gym owners could attest to having the same issue. To that fact, we would love for you to be our guest and come on and share your parking lot problems. Share whatever problems that you're having. Ask us questions. Help us, pick our brains to help you with certain different issues that you have going on in your gym, you can sign up to be our guest at joinmodus.com and click on podcast. And the button says be our guest. There's a little form there. We would love to have gym owners on the show to talk shop.
I think it's about that time. Dad joke time. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right. What does a cow use to do math?
Oh, I am thinking something with milk, but I don't know.
I don't know. I bet you could probably get this one if you spent some time, but I'll save you the time. A calculator.
A cow.
Calculator. Boom, boom.
Oh, goodness gracious. I'm envisioning a little cow doing abstract algebra.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, talking about these parking issues, man, I'm 25 years into parking issues, and it can be a little nuts, but it's often good to talk to others and to network with others that are dealing with those same issues. Heck, I've thought about networking with Chick-fil-A. They do a great job of getting a lot of cars through fast. But anyway, if you'd like to network more with us, we'd love to tell you about MotUS. MotUS unites gym owners in a collaborative community focused on business growth. Membership benefits include access to our comprehensive Gym Owners Vault featuring essential business templates, regular updates with fresh resources, exclusive entry to our VIP Owners Facebook group, monthly webinars tailored specifically for gym owners, significant discounts from industry partners including Cheer Expo, Choice Events, All Out Brands, Infinity, Vault Event Media, Cheer Sounds, Bookshop Fundraising, and much, much more. So if you're interested, join the movement today at www.joinmodus.com. Once again, that is www.joinmoutus.com. We would love to have you.
Casey, MOTUS.com.
M-O-T. Did I spell it wrong?
You said MOUTUS. We're
Was I singing Mickey Mouse?
You might have been. MOU. No, right? I don't even know. We're having a rough morning. I need to drink my coffee.
Let's try it again. JOINMOTUS.com.
You got it. Perfect. Awesome.
Second time's a charm.
Yes. So sign up for MotUS today. All right. We've got a couple questions from around the country to answer. You want to get into that?
Let's do it.
All right. So we have Sheila from Texas. She says, I struggle with floor space. Every coach feels like every minute of every practice needs to be on a full floor. What should I do?
Well, congratulations, Sheila, that you are out of space and struggling with that. That means that you're running a great business. So I think that's awesome. It's all about having, to me, goodness gracious, I think it's taken us 25 years in business to get this somewhat right. Because we have had many floor discussions, and sometimes those discussions are at not the right time in front of the kids, because we're debating who's getting what floor and who's going where. And we're blessed to have a lot of space, but some floors are considered better than other floors. And
right.
Like, when do I get the good floor? And I'm like, they're all 9 strips and all spring floors made out of birch with the same springs underneath, but there are what's considered good floors and bad floors in our gym. So this is a common problem. But I think when your staff knows where they're going and when they're going there before they show up is the best thing that you can do. Literally at every day around noon, we put out a schedule to our staff, and that schedule is not making massive changes. You know that if your team practices on Monday, you're practicing on the same floor every single Monday. We're not swapping that around. But where we sometimes get into trouble is, competition weeks where we may lose a day to travel. We talked about that a second ago, something like that, or extra teams coming in. Where are they going? Who are they sharing a floor with? And which floor is it? So it's imperative that your staff knows what's happening prior to coming in the building so that they are fully aware of what's going on.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that in a perfect world, every team has every minute of practice on a full floor, but you don't have to have that to be successful. And I think that a lot of times, coaches want to try to use that sometimes as an excuse, that like, well, I don't have a full floor to practice, so my team can't be any good. When I mean, there's programs out there that don't even have a full floor in their gym.
Correct.
There's programs out there that don't have air conditioning. And they're still doing it and they're still making it great because that's
And
their
they do
situation.
well. They are
Correct.
competitive.
Correct. And that's their situation. And they don't dwell on that being their situation and they rock it out and they make it great. And so I think that it's important to just, be mindful and keep everybody mindful of that. And yes, in a perfect world, we want a full floor for every second of practice. But the reality is we're not using that most of the time. Like we're not using the entire floor most of the time. And so I think that what, Casey, your point of like letting the coaches know in advance, like, and keeping it consistent as much as possible. Like there are things that come up that may change the plan, but occasionally, but like if it's every Monday, you have this floor and you have the front half of the floor for the first hour and then you have the whole floor for the second hour. Well, then the coach kind of knows to, you know, schedule accordingly. And if that isn't working in the coach's practice plan, then I say, I suggest communicating that with the owner and saying, hey, is there any way to flip flop this where I can have the full floor for the first hour and then half of the floor for the second hour, or whatever the case may be. But it comes down to communication, and a successful business, quite frankly, most of the time is not giving a full floor to every single team, every single minute of every single practice.
Yeah, I agree with that. Most of our gyms, the Stingray locations, they don't have the ability to offer that all the time.
Yeah.
I would offer one more thing to look at whoever's doing the scheduling. Oftentimes we consider all teams equal. Like, oh, I'm going to schedule a team, but there are teams with 12 kids and there are teams with 38 kids. So that needs to, if I take two medium-sized teams, let's say you have medium teams in your gym, and I am trying to get two teams with 30 members to share a floor, that could be way more difficult than, hey, can I put a medium team with a small team, or can I put two small teams together?
Yeah.
Another consideration is age, because oftentimes our tiny and mini teams may be smaller, and just because they're smaller doesn't mean that they always do well sharing space because they can't pay attention. Like we learned years ago, if you take our tiny team and you put them right where they can see our large co-ed team, you're not getting anything done because they are just enamored with high flying basket tosses and
Yeah.
all the cool stuff going on over there, and you can't get them to pay attention.
You you bring up a good point too about sharing floor space, like instead of dictating 1 hour you have half the floor, 1 hour you have the full floor, you could also, an option would be to, whatever teams work to get, maybe it's two senior teams, and you guys are going to share this floor for the 2 hours that you both have practice together. And there's some positive benefit to that too. Because when it comes time to need the full floor or you want to throw your routine full out, like you could take that practice and be like, all right, we're going to both go through a warm up, which very rarely uses a full floor except for a handful of minutes, right? And then you take turns throwing your routine and the other team is watching, and now you're building too like a little bit of camaraderie and excitement and friendship and community between the two teams, which is really great as well. They're kind of working together to get better and help each other, and I think that those are like organic moments that get created from happy accidents like that in the gym.
We have in our gym what's called full out parties, and these things are great. Because like four teams will get together on one of our floors that you can back up from and you can see and you can get good video, and they'll have a full out party. Those are awesome, provided that they're not overdone. We have sometimes had to guide everyone on that because everybody loves a full out party. It's fun. And I think they're great leading up to a competition. I do not think they're great 3 weeks out from a competition because sometimes a full out party lasts 1 hour and your team went full out for 2.5 minutes and then watched everybody, and then you wasted that practice time.
Yes, absolutely. All right, next question is Nancy from Kansas. How do I know which option is best for my program, the USASF or the Open Series?
Man, that's a loaded question right there, isn't it? So,
It sure is.
I mean, I know what I know. I've been a part of the USASF since its inception, and the reality is the USASF has been criticized along the years, and frankly, some of that criticism has been warranted. I mean, there's been some things that we could all look at that they could have done a better job at. But the reality for the longest time, and still to this time, they were the only ones willing to take on that job. And I think also the reality is we know that that was a varsity funded thing to begin with, but millions of dollars went into it. And there were safety procedures that were put into place. And whether those were perfect or not, it was something. And it was a start to something that we did not have. So we chose that route as an organization, and we try to add to the USASF, and you know,
Yeah, I agree, Casey. I feel like it's hard for people. I don't know, like you and I are old enough to remember a time when it was really just kind of whatever, you take your team and compete. I mean, I think that some of the new, um, even in the last, well, I mean, since the USASF was created, right, in 2004, and there's been so many gyms, I would be curious to know the statistic, but how many gyms have started when the USASF existed? It's got to be thousands. And so they only know having some standardization in place. And so I think, that it's for us, I mean, you would go to a competition sometimes and compete on a wrestling mat because that's what the mat was that they had, or it would
or
be
no border, or an unsafe warm up room. I mean, we had
correct.
athletes that have been injured in warm up room because it wasn't adequate. Like you said, there were no standards.
Agree. So I think that my advice to Nancy, to answer the question, Nancy, I think it's good that you're asking questions, first of all, but I think that I would suggest, the standards that the industry has created together as a sport, really, like everybody had, an opportunity to vote and give their opinion on those standards, right? So just I would say that whatever you're choosing, make sure that the standards that are being upheld, if there's no one kind of watching over that, just then you have to be vigilant yourself to make sure that standards are in place for your athletes and for your business. But I also think too that, it doesn't have to be either or necessarily. And to Casey's point, I think I lean towards, recommending everybody be a USASF member regardless, because there's a whole lot of resources and information um, that they provide for you as a member club that I think are important and helpful to your business. And so why not be a member, and why not have your athletes be members no matter what path you choose? And then regardless of whether you're choosing USASF event producers or you're choosing Open Championship Series event producers, you should be doing your research as an owner anyway to learn about the events that you're going to. How are they run? Do they do a good job? Do they stay on time? Do they have an appropriate warm up? Do they have an appropriate floor size? Are they following the standard that you've become accustomed to, or that you believe is the correct standard? I think that's the best
Yeah, I agree with
thing
it.
that you can do.
There's so many great competition companies, and then there's likely some that aren't that great. But the word there is competition, and that is the thing. The USASF has competition these days, and I think that's great. I think it will make them better. I think it'll make both sides better. But
Yeah.
it's really up to us to make sure that where we're choosing, that those standards are held for the safety of our athletes. So I think that's an important thing. I know our organization, we're all of our athletes to date are USASF members. But we do compete at some non USASF events from time to time. We just make sure that we do our due diligence to make sure that those events are run appropriately with the proper standards in place.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, last question. We have Greg from Massachusetts. What is the appropriate practice time for my all-star teams? I feel like in order to be competitive, we need to be practicing 10 plus hours a week, but I want my athletes to have a life too. I think this is
Man,
a big
that
question,
is a big
because the
question.
sport
So
is just getting so much harder, right? Don't you, Casey? And the demand on the kids is so much greater. And, I mean, again, not to give our age away, but you and I have been around for a minute. And I feel like back in the day, kind of the the excitement about All Star was, for especially like, I mean, we got a lot of gymnasts to convert over to All Star, and I feel like it was a lot because they were like, I can do this and have fun and only have to practice, maybe 4 or 6 hours a week. I don't have to be in the gym 22 hours a week. But the sport's gotten, I mean, it's gotten to the point where like it kind of is getting more difficult to train all these elite level skills without having that amount of time in the gym.
I'm going to, I've thought about this a lot. And exactly what you said is exactly how I would have said it probably 5 years ago. But then now my thinking has actually changed a little bit on this. So I do want to back up for a second. That's a great question, but an even better statement at the end of this question here that he says, I want my athletes to have a life too. Absolutely. I never want an athlete to be known as their sole purpose. I am an all-star cheerleader. That's who I am. Like I'm a base on this team, or I am a flyer on this team. Like there's got to be more to your life than that. So that is the most that's the most important thing. I think, the time demands are there. It is probably most elite level programs that are trying to be competitive are, probably creeping in on 8 to 9, maybe even 10 hours a week. And looking back and really, really looking back over the history of All Star Cheer, I think it's been always been the same. The difference is, back in the past, we had 4 hours of mandatory practice. We practiced twice a week, 2 hours. That's how everybody kind of got their start, which left a lot more time for the kids to come in and tumble. I think they were still there 9 or 10 hours because when you love something, man,
It's the truth.
when you love, like when I love baseball, then hey, I don't have 10 hours of baseball practice a week, but I got a batting cage out back or in my basement. I'm going to these lessons. I'm taking a private coaching lesson. I'm working with a strength and fitness guy. And the reality is I'm doing baseball 15 hours a week, even though I
Right.
only have 4 hours. So I don't think it's changed a whole lot. And where it
I
has
think it's
changed,
the I think it's the mental aspect, like to mentally be required to attend 4 hours of practice and choose to put in an additional 10 versus being required
yeah,
to
you
to
got to be there.
participate in 10 or 12 hours worth
Yeah,
of
so I
practice. I
think
think that's,
it's odd because a kid, and I see this too, a 17-year-old on a high level worlds team, they want to be at practice. You don't have to you're not worried about them trying to skip for the birthday party. The 5-year-old, they don't know whether they want to be at practice or not. So that's a big piece to me of introducing the younger kids in, making that time less, and then hopefully they fall in love with the sport. And because that's the thing, we want everybody to graduate from our program, whenever they start, whether it's at 4 or 14, we want them to graduate from our program. So
right.
putting them in a position to to not burn out their first year in, and that can be tough. So, but for us, a lot of the way we do it, because we do practice a lot, I would be lying to you if I said, and I feel like sometimes people do kind of white lie. Yeah, we only practice a couple hours a week. Yeah, until the month before competition, then we were practicing a couple hours every single day. You hear some crazy like that. But the thing for us, and we kind of got this out of school, is like our schools have what's called a dead week, and like nothing happens on that week. So we have in turn made several dead weeks. For example, we always close down over July 4th week. We don't do any cheerleading then. Like there are no, you can't have a practice during that time. Thanksgiving week, you can't have a practice. Like we set the times where you can't practice. It doesn't mean our gym's not open. I mean, there's still private lessons and clinics and that kind of stuff,
Right.
but for our teams. So we try to take a good, I don't even know exactly what it is, but it's 4 to 5 weeks a year where you cannot have a practice. Uh,
So that's good.
so
So you're giving them that break kind of elsewhere.
We are. And then we encourage, the tough part is we encourage people use those breaks as your vacations, your family time, all of that.
I think that, one of the things I feel like, Casey, for me, that's important to mention too is, every team, every age, every level is different. So it doesn't have to be one answer for every team. Your most elite team in the gym, maybe they are practicing more. Maybe they're not because they are high school kids and they want to also do school cheer and other things. And so you're purposefully not having them practice as much. Or maybe your program's gotten to the point where you're like, hey, this is the commitment. You want to be on this team and we practice 9 hours a week, but your tinies really, honestly, for the tinies, a 45-minute practice is probably best. But, most tiny practices I feel like are an hour and 15 or an hour and a half. But, probably 2 45-minute practices for the tinies is ideal.
Hours start short and then they add on as the kids, gain the ability to be able to pay attention.
Yeah. They can't sit still for 2 hours.
Most gyms have several different programs. I know ours does. We have our elite full year teams. We have our full year non-travel teams. So that alleviates a lot of time because they don't travel. We have our half year teams, which that's exactly what it says. It goes for half a year and they only practice twice a week for an hour and a half. So theirs is 3 hours. So they're all different. Like we're offering different programs that offer a different level of commitment, time-wise, money-wise, everything. So if you have that ability, offer that, and then, but be clear with folks of, hey, this is what you're signing up for, so that they know.
I agree. Well, that is all of our questions for today, but we were talking about standards in the industry. And if you want to experience excellence and the awesome standards of the Cheer Expo, then you should attend a Cheer Expo event. Join us at the Cheer Expo for your 25-26 season. We offer many cheerleading events throughout the United States from East Coast to West Coast. Experience excellence when you attend the Cheer Expo. Visit our website, thecheerexpo.com, to learn more. That's thecheerexpo.com, TheCheerExpo.com. Did I spell that right?
I think so. Okay, you definitely need to experience Lucky, though. Lucky is
the bomb. Lucky is super fun. Yes, you definitely need to experience Lucky. Okay, well, it is that time for our Simon Sinek quote. And our quote today, Casey, is the value of our knowledge multiplies when we share what we know with others.
Yeah, I love that.
Me too.
I'm a person that has zero secrets. I don't have any secrets in my life. I'll tell my life story to anybody. But to me, my story is the knowledge, and I say this all the time. I can tell you way more about what not to do as opposed to what to do. But, if you can take my mistakes or my failures and not have them, then, that just all boils into kind of what this quote is. Just
I totally agree.
Sharing everything.
My quote that I live by is we rise by lifting others. And I feel like we lift others by sharing, by helping, by, doing. And I agree with you. I'm like, I made a ton of mistakes. And if I can save you from those mistakes and get you where you want to be quicker, like I am there to do that. I am there to help. And I think it's great. And I do think that our knowledge multiplies when we share what we know with others. The knowledge is meant to be shared. It's not meant to be hoarded.
I think there's another quote. I'll botch it, but the premise is, every good idea I've ever had is somebody else's. I'm just borrowing it or expanding upon it. So, I wouldn't be so many blessings in my life, and it's because of the help of others and their knowledge and their experience.
Yeah. We know that there are amazing gym owners out there. There are some incredibly talented all-star cheerleaders who have become adults and open businesses. We would love to have you on our show. Submissions are open for the MotUS Edge. Click on the podcast tab at joinmotus.com and select Be Our Guest. That's joinmotus.com. Click the podcast section and fill out the form that says Be Our Guest. Be sure to follow us on YouTube at the MotUS Edge Podcast or Instagram and X at Join MotUS. And wherever you listen to your podcasts, give us a like or a shout out. If you like what we're doing and you want to hear more, let us know. Thank you guys for listening, and we're excited for you to have the MotUS Edge. See you guys next week.
Take care, guys. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to The MotUS Edge. We hope you had a blast. Join us next week for more on business, leadership, and motivation. Subscribe and follow the show where you get your podcasts. Subscribe to our newsletter at joinmotus.com. The MotUS Edge podcast is produced by ClantonCreative.com.